In the shadow of a vast, arid desert, a man named Jacob stood on the threshold of an extraordinary journey. This was no ordinary trek. It was a pilgrimage that would not only define his destiny, but also shape the future of an entire nation. Jacob, the patriarch, the one who wrestled with angels and bore the scars of a life marked by trials and triumphs, was about to cross into Egypt. But this journey was more than a physical migration. It was a spiritual and historical odyssey that would test the fabric of faith and family. The story of Jacob's descent into Egypt is embedded in the rich tapestry of the book of Genesis, a narrative that has captivated hearts and minds for millennia. It is a story of divine promises, human frailty, and the unyielding thread of divine providence that weaves through the lives of the patriarchs. As Jacob prepared to leave the land of Canaan, the narrative echoes with a sense of foreboding and anticipation. This was not merely a journey to a new land. It was a passage into the unknown, a leap of faith that required trust in a God whose presence was both mysterious and reassuring. The parallel between Jacob's departure and the earlier call of Abraham is striking. Just as God had promised Abraham that he would make of him a great nation, so too did God reassure Jacob that his descendants would flourish in Egypt. The language of the divine promise is deliberate and resonant, echoing the covenantal blessings that had sustained the patriarchs through generations. When God appeared to Jacob at Beersheba, the first-person pronoun Anoki was emphatically used, a linguistic detail that underscores the personal and intimate nature of God's commitment. This was not a distant deity, but a God who promised to go down with his people and bring them back up. A promise that would resonate through the exiles of Babylon and the Roman conquest. The journey to Egypt was not just a physical relocation. It was a test of faith and a reminder of the divine presence in the midst of human struggle. The sojourn in Egypt was framed as an ordeal, a trial that would ultimately lead to a grander purpose. Just as the binding of Isaac was a test of Abraham's faith, the Egyptian sojourn was a crucible that would forge the identity of the Israelites. The repeated emphasis on conveying or carrying Jacob, an elderly and infirm man, underscores the vulnerability of the patriarchs and the need for divine intervention. As Jacob's family entered Egypt, the narrative shifts to a genealogical list, a method of closure that marks the transition from one era to another. The list of Jacob's descendants, totaling 70, is not just a numerical tally, but a symbolic representation of the fullness and completeness of the patriarchal legacy. The number 70, 10 times the sacred number 7, conveys a sense of divine favor and completeness. This large family, the nucleus of the future tribes of Israel, was about to embark on a journey that would shape their identity and destiny. The encounter between Jacob and Joseph is a poignant moment in the narrative. Joseph, the long-lost son, now a powerful figure in Egypt, appeared before his father in a scene that can only be described as a divine epiphany. The image of Joseph, harnessed in his chariot, riding to meet his father, is a powerful contrast to the humble origins of the patriarchs. The absence of reciprocal weeping on Jacob's part is a subtle detail that invites the reader to imagine the depth of Jacob's emotions, overwhelmed by the sight of his son, alive and thriving. The settlement in Goshen, a region set apart for the Israelites, was both a practical and symbolic move. The Egyptians, largely sedentary agriculturalists, viewed the nomadic shepherds with a mix of disdain and suspicion. This segregation, while rooted in cultural and economic differences, also served to preserve the distinct identity of the Israelites. The land of Goshen, with its fertile pastures, provided a refuge where the Israelites could thrive and grow in number. As the years passed, the initial favor shown to Joseph and his family began to wane. The rise of a new Pharaoh who did not know Joseph marked a turning point in the Israelites' fortunes. The narrative of Joseph's rise to power and the subsequent economic policies he implemented are a testament to his wisdom and foresight. The famine that gripped the region served as a catalyst for Joseph's administrative prowess, as he collected silver and livestock, and eventually land and people, in exchange for food. The Israelites, initially beneficiaries of Joseph's provisions, found themselves increasingly dependent on the Egyptian state. The transition from prosperity to subjugation is a gradual but inevitable part of the narrative. The Egyptians, once welcoming, became oppressive, and the Israelites found themselves in a new kind of bondage. The divine promise, however, remained steadfast. The sojourn in Egypt, though marked by hardship, was also a time of exponential growth. The Israelites, once a small family, had become a numerous and distinct people, ready to fulfill their divine calling. Jacob's final days in Egypt were marked by a sense of contentment and fulfillment. The patriarch, who had lived a life of trials and tribulations, found solace in the sight of his son Joseph, and the assurance that his descendants would one day return to the promised land. The covenantal promise, passed down through generations, was a source of hope and strength. Jacob's request to be buried in Canaan, alongside his ancestors, was a poignant reminder of the enduring connection to the land of promise. In the end, the journey to Egypt was more than a physical migration. It was a spiritual and historical odyssey that shaped the identity of a nation. The sojourn in Egypt, with its trials and triumphs, was a crucible that forged the Israelites into a people ready to fulfill their divine destiny. The divine promise, the unyielding thread of providence, and the enduring faith of the patriarchs are the enduring legacies of this remarkable journey. And so, as Jacob bowed at the head of his bed, the narrative of the patriarchs came to a close. But the story of the Israelites was just beginning.